Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, warshippers of all ages, welcome to YouTube. My name is SeaRaptor, and today we are concluding our first look at the brand new German destroyer branch with a look at Tier 10's Elbing. Now, as usual, I can show you the ship in port, we can speculate, we can talk about the stats. I cannot show you gameplay. That is not a thing that I can do, unfortunately. I'm allowed to play the ship. I haven't yet. Honestly, I probably will, guys. I tend not to, but I try to, maybe develop a little bit of an opinion after I do this video because I don't want to say things that I shouldn't, so I wait until after I've done filming. But this one intrigues me enough, and certainly Schultz down at Tier 9 has intrigued me enough that I really want to give him a go. So don't be surprised if you see me derping around a couple of games in these ships just to try them out. But let's look at Elbing, right? We're at the top of the line, so we expect good things, don't we? So let's have a check. Starting off, as we typically do, with hit points. Look at this hit pool. Look at this hit point pool. 30,900 hit points for a destroyer. 31,000 hit points. That's right, kids. There are cruisers at Tier 10 that do not have this many hit points. I'm looking at you, Austin, which isn't technically in the game yet, but this thing does have more hit points than Austin, believe it or not. Yowza. Just, wow. And doesn't have a Citadel. See, that's the thing. Once you start getting up into this kind of HP pool, what quote-unquote balances the ship is its ability to lose large chunks of health quickly, right? Again, via Citadel hits. That's what happens to cruisers that are in this range, right? And this thing has no Citadel. Like, just doesn't. I mean, it doesn't have a heal either, so this is all it gets. But still, you put survivability expert on this thing, and you're getting up to like 35,000 hit points. This is it's like a Tier 8 cruiser, right? Like what? Wow. Okay. Yeah, she's chunky. Armor layout. Like we've been seeing on the German destroyers, we've got 19mm extremities, 19 or 16 is normal, and then we've got this 25mm plate. Now, I will say that this plate runs from forward of the forward turret all the way to the end of her superstructure. The overwhelming majority of this ship is protected by 25mm plating here through the midships, right? Some of these ships we looked at, I think back at Merker, it kind of started, kind of behind the turrets and then kind of quit, maybe back towards the end of the superstructure. You had smaller areas protected. Elbing is very well protected for a mid-tier destroyer. I mean, for a high-tier destroyer. Again, what does this mean? This means that if you are engaging one of these ships with opposing 5-inch destroyer guns, your HE shells will shatter. More than likely, will shatter on this broadside plating. So, if you're in a Shimakaze, let's say, this thing can be a real detriment to your health if you're not careful. Yeah, so, okay, so that's continuing. Maneuverability and concealment. 36.2 knots, 890-meter turning circle, 6.3 second rudder shift time. This is not a ship that's going to handle like a destroyer. It's absolutely not. If you're, again, I've talked about, we looked back at Tier 8, America kind of handling like chunky Akizuki. This ship is going to handle even worse than Harugamo at Tier 10. Now, the speed is not terrible, but not amazing, right? 36 knots is kind of good for not worst in tier, but okay. You look down the tier, you've got a fair chunk of ships at 35. I'm looking at you, Holland and Smallin and Daring. Gearing is 36. Harugamo is 35 and change. Vampire Deuce is 35. This ship comes in ahead of all of those, but literally behind everybody else. So we're not worst in tier, but you're in the bottom quarter. You're in the bottom third, right? Not fast. 890-meter turning circle is absolutely worst in tier. Like, we're not even close. Nobody else holds a candle to this bad maneuverability. So, you're getting an improved armor layout, you're getting a lot of health, but you're paying for it in terms of maneuverability. But does she pay for it in terms of detection? This is the interesting thing. The answer is no, she doesn't. A full stealth build Elbing will get down to about a 6.6-ish, 6.7 kilometer detection circle. That is absolutely not worst in tier. Not in a tier where Haberovsk and Kleber and Marceau exist, right? And Elbing, in its own way, has the potential to be more dangerous, certainly to opposing destroyers, even to certain opposing light cruisers, than any of those other ships. So, interesting. You almost expect a ship with this chunky to be spotted from orbit, like a Haberovsk, let's say. Elbing is not. Elbing is actually fairly stealthy, certainly for something with this amount of health, which is a little surprising. Main battery. This is what we saw. This is the exact same main battery we saw on Schultz. One tier down, you have these double barrel 60 caliber 150 millimeter guns that are dual purpose. These are dual purpose turrets. You can see here in the gun sleeves, they will elevate. All right. On a 7.5-second reload. Now, the shell values have changed again. We're leaning even farther more towards AP centric here. You see there, 4,100 damage out of the AP shells, versus only 1,700 out of the HE shells. Now, what's interesting about that, let me go check this here, because if I remember correctly, that was 1,900. What was it on Felix Schultz? It was 1,700 was the same. Okay, so this the same HE value, but it's even more AP damage than we saw on Schultz down at tier 9. So, like, there's a tremendous push here for you to be firing AP out of these guns basically at all times. I'm going to be fascinated to see how these guns play out in reality. And again, as we've talked about with the other ships, look at that dispersion circle, 58 meters. These guns are going to feel like little laser beams, right? Every time you pull the trigger, it's like I said in another video, it's all those, you're going to put 6 shells downrange, and it's a question, your gunners are going to be asking you what porthole you want to put them through on the enemy ship. Like, it's going to feel that good. I cannot wait to take the ship into combat and see how she feels, because I get chills thinking about that dispersion with these guns. I love the German 150s. I love my Königsberg. I love my Nürnberg. And this is like taking that to the max. So I desperately want to like these ships. 12.3 kilometers on the main battery range. That's pretty good. And again, it's pretty serviceable for these guns. It is, let's kind of look down the list here. I'm filtering things over here. I'm going to take the tier 9s back out. Main battery range, yeah, okay, so... Yeah, so it's actually on the high end for the tier. Kleber's 13 and change actually knocks it out, but this is like Grozavoy range. This is way better than Haberovsk, for example. Z52 has about this range. Harugamo has about this range. So yeah, 12.3 kilometers, not too shabby. And remember, you've got the option to take not only the upgrade in slot 6 that will boost your range, but if I remember correctly, this guy right here, yep, there we go, main battery and AA expert will give you another 20%. So you can push these guns. You know what, let's find out while we're sitting here. Let's just do it. I'm curious. I'm actually curious. If I put in a range mod, which is this guy, and I do this, and I take, it doesn't matter. I do this, fine. Yeah, master it. Let's go see. I want to see what it looks, I want to see where we land. What is my main battery? 17 kilometers. 17-kilometer range for these guns. And what's the dispersion circle at that rate? 75 meters, guys. 75-meter dispersion ellipse at 17 kilometers. And these shells have almost 1,000 meters a second of velocity. There's a lot to like about this main battery. It's really intriguing. What I'm curious about is how survivable the ship's really going to be at that range, right? Like, she doesn't handle well, right? That's the thing about, like, if you shoot at a Haberovsk, you know, right? The thing doesn't handle well. And this thing doesn't have anything like Haberovsk's speed, and she actually, honestly, probably handles worse than Haberovsk. So, but that main battery, oh, it's so intriguing. Torpedoes. A couple of quad launchers here amidships. These are the best torpedoes we've seen in this branch so far. They retain that 13.7 alpha. They now go out to an 8-kilometer range. That gives her a pretty decent stealth torpedo capability if she wants to flex that. 65 knots, pretty solid there. So yeah, these are the best torpedoes we've found in this branch, and you would, as you kind of would expect to find these at tier 10, but they don't hit that hard, right? 13.7 alpha is not amazing. It does give her the opportunity, if she finds herself, one of the things that I think Wargaming has kind of gone out of their way with these ships to avoid is making another Kleber, right? Because let's be honest, Kleber is really irritating. If you're playing in a competitive mode and you're a stationary battleship or a stationary heavy cruiser and you're holding a position, say you're in a Petro or a Stalingrad or something, or even pick another battleship, like a Kremlin, okay? You can very easily, if your team's not on the ball or if you're not careful, you can very easily get charged by a Kleber or two and just torped off the board. Super easy, dead, right? And their speed allows you to just close with you and crush you. Now, Elbing here does not have that speed. She will not have that speed. And nor does she have the little mini nukes that the French carry, right? The French torpedoes hit like trains. However, she has a lot of health and she has better stealth than Kleber. So you have less time to react nominally, depending on how she's piloted in the situation. So, interesting. Very, very curious. Let's look at her AA defense. Once again, we're seeing a 6.9 kilometer AA circle here with a couple of flak explosions. And don't mind that 2012 number. That's because of the captain's skill I took. It's actually lower than that. But yeah, so she puts up a couple of flak puffs. The AA on paper looks better than it really is. She suffers from the same problem that Schultz does, in that the overwhelming majority of her AA power is packed into these 30 millimeter quadruple mounts, right? She has quite a number of these. These are obviously very high DPS mounts. The trouble is that her long range aura comes out of these guns, and her mid range aura comes out of these 55s. Now, the 55s, we find these on Hindenburg, for example. And Hindenburg's middle range aura is incredibly good. This is a great anti-aircraft mount. Unfortunately, Elbing only mounts 2 of them, which means that her mid-range aura, you see there, is only 88 DPS. So 46 DPS in the outer ring, not really exciting. 88 DPS in the middle ring, a little better. Yeah, but I wish I had more of these 55 millimeter garrots. And then she has a tremendous amount of DPS in that inner ring. But of course, by then, it gets exciting. Now, one other thing I want to point out, 5.1 kilometer aerial detection, guys. Remember, we harped about this on Merker. Schultz suffers from a high aerial detection as well. So does Elbing. So this is a ship that will suffer rocket strikes, right? Enemy carriers will be able to probably get lined up on you all day long to make these rocket strikes. And a ship that's not, she's not very maneuverable, it's going to hurt a little bit. However, the one thing I'm curious about, and I haven't looked at the carrier numbers, you do have better armor, right? You have better armor than most other destroyers. So maybe this 25 millimeter armor will get some of those rockets to shatter, some of those 4 and 5 inch rockets to shatter, rather than allowing them to full pen you. I need to go look at that, honestly. I should have looked at that before I made this video. I'll look at it afterwards and put a little comment down in the video description after I post this thing. Quick look at consumables. Just like Schultz down at tier 9, we have high tier German Hydro now, out to full 6 kilometers. Yay! Woohoo! Finally. And then, of course, you do have standard stock defensive fire here in this second slot. No heal. Feels bad. But I think they're trying to, they're playing cagey with this ship, right? These ships, I think, have a lot of potential in them, and so they're trying to be smart and not get caught out. Let's say, not get themselves in too much trouble, not go overboard. Test them now in this configuration. See how they do. See how the data comes in, and if you think you need something else, then you can look at potentially other consumables or whatever. So yeah, guys, there we go. That's our first look at Elbing. I do want to point out, she has like a Z46 turret arrangement here. You remember Schultz had that midships turret with weird firing angles. Elbing here has a bow turret and then 2 stern turrets. So she's going to be really good at kiting. I look at this ship, and what I see, the first thing I see is a destroyer that wants to back up other destroyers, like a destroyer leader, right? Think of this as a ship. Let's say you're in a tier 10 game and you're on the same flank as a Gearing, or Daring, a Gearing or a Daring, something with better stealth than you. That guy is a cap contester. You in this ship, not so much. However, if you let that guy sit about a kilometer and a half in front of you, anything that spots him won't be able to see you just yet. So if he gets in a gunfight, let's say your friendly friendly other destroyer gets in a gunfight with somebody, and then suddenly, bam, there you are with 31,000 hit points and laser accurate guns at close support to a friendly destroyer who was in a cap circle. That's interesting, right? That to me is an interesting play style for this ship. And with these guns and those AP shells, you should absolutely have the ability to harass cruisers, just the same way like a Haberovs does with her AP shells, or even a Grozovoy. I'm really, really curious to play this ship, guys. I'm gonna have to break down and do it. Anyway, that's our first look and some early thoughts on Elbing. Hope you enjoyed that. Wash your hands, be safe, and I'll catch you next time.